Kelly was driving along the snow-covered road, returning home after a long day at work. The radio broadcast sweet Christmas melodies that contrasted with the biting cold outside. The tranquility of the winter night was only interrupted by the dull noise of a tire deflating suddenly. With a sense of frustration mixed with concern, Kelly pulled the car over to the side of the road, a kilometer from Cold Springs. Her breath condensed into small clouds of vapor in front of her mouth every time she exhaled as she opened the trunk to get the jack and spare tire. The nearest street light was weak and distant, leaving her in semi-darkness, while snowflakes danced slowly around her. As she tried to focus on the task, a sense of unease pervaded her, as if she was being watched. Her instinct did not deceive her. From the shadow of the adjacent forest along the road, a man slowly emerged, moving with a confidence that seemed out of place in that frozen solitude. Kelly noticed him, and her heart leapt into her throat. She tried to stay calm, telling herself that perhaps he was just a passerby, wanting to offer his help. However, the intention in his eyes left no room for doubt. He was anything but friendly. As the man approached with a determined step, Kelly, driven by survival instinct, grabbed the pepper spray that her father insisted she always carry with her. With a quick motion, she sprayed it towards the man, hitting him directly in the eyes. He screamed in pain, allowing her to take advantage of the moment of confusion to start running towards the town, despite the slippery ground and her own fear. The escape was not without consequences. The man, blinded by pain but driven by anger, chased her, managing to scratch her arm with something sharp he held in his hand. The sharp pain of the wound and the biting cold of the winter air heightened Kelly's sense of terror, but the will to survive pushed her to run even faster. Arriving in Cold Springs, Kelly hoped to find refuge and understanding. Instead, she found herself facing a town that seemed to have lost every sense of humanity. Despite her cries for help, the people she came across turned the other way, ignoring her pleas. It was as if her experience of terror was invisible to others, or worse, as if it was something they were already accustomed to. With her strength now at its limit, Kelly reached the only place she thought she could find safety, the police station. There, exhausted and injured, she told her story, but the reception she received was lukewarm. The complaint was recorded, but she was told it would be difficult to identify the assailant without more information. Days and nights passed, with Kelly trying to recover not only physically, but also emotionally. The town of Cold Springs, with its indifference, had become alien to her. The identity of her attacker remained shrouded in mystery, as did the reason why no one in town seemed to truly care about what had happened to her that night. In a remote corner of Colorado, under the heavy blanket of winter snow, lay a small wooden cabin hidden among the fir and pine trees dotting the mountainous landscape. It was the refuge that Tom, a young writer from Denver in search of inspiration and solitude, had chosen to spend a few weeks away from the hustle and bustle of city life. He had always found comfort in nature, and that cabin seemed to offer him the perfect shelter to concentrate on his new novel. The journey from Denver to the cabin was peaceful, with Tom driving through breathtaking landscapes made even more spectacular by the veil of snow covering everything. Upon arriving at the cabin, he quickly settled in, lighting the fireplace and unpacking the few belongings he had brought with him. The first few days passed without incident, with Tom completely absorbed in his work, writing for hours in front of the crackling fire, only interrupted by walks around the area to gather wood or simply to admire the desolate beauty of the winter mountains. However, one evening, as the shadows lengthened and the wind howled through the trees, Tom realized he was not as isolated as he had thought. Through the fogged windows of the cabin, he saw a dark figure moving among the trees. Initially, he thought it was a figment of his imagination, fueled by the hours spent writing intricate plots and unsettling characters. But the figure reappeared on subsequent nights, getting closer and closer to the cabin, until it was clear it was not a hallucination. Tom tried to rationalize the presence of that figure, perhaps an inhabitant of the nearby village of Aspen, lost or seeking help. But when he began to find tracks around the cabin, deep footprints in the snow that could not belong to an animal, anxiety turned to terror. He decided to confront the intruder, but every time he went out, the figure had already disappeared, leaving behind only the sinister echo of its steps in the snow. One night, the boundary between fear and reality definitively broke. Tom was awakened by the sound of someone trying to force the front door. With trembling hands, he grabbed an old fireplace poker as an improvised weapon and approached. With his heart racing, he suddenly opened the door, but there was no one there. However, on the doormat lay a message written on a piece of yellowed paper. "I'm watching you." The following day, Tom decided to go to Aspen for help. He told his story to a few villagers, but their reaction was one of surprise and disbelief. They told him of an old hermit, a man who, many years before, had been a respected member of the community, but had lost his mind after the tragic death of his family in a fire. Since then, he wandered the woods, avoided by all, shrouded in mystery and stories of madness. Taking the warning seriously, Tom returned to the cabin intending to collect his belongings and abandon that cursed place. But upon his arrival, he found the door wide open, and inside, everything was turned upside down as if someone had searched desperately for something. At that moment, he understood that the hermit was not just a spectral figure tormenting him from the outside, but had entered his cabin, his life, turning it into a tangible nightmare. Despite the terror that had begun to seep into his bones, Tom was at heart a lover of thrills and danger. His curious nature and passion for living on the edge pushed him to stay in the cabin, despite everything he had experienced so far. With a mix of courage and madness, he decided to face the night pretending to go to sleep, turning off all the lights to give the impression of an empty house, immersed in silence. At 3 a.m., a sudden and violent noise tore through the silence, coming from the back door of the cabin. Tom, armed with only a kitchen knife borrowed from the cabin's modest kitchen, headed towards the source of the disturbance with his heart in his throat. When he reached the door, he came face to face with an imposing figure. A man with a wild, threatening appearance wielding a hammer menacingly. Without hesitation, the man lunged at Tom, triggering a furious and desperate struggle. The intruder's strength was overwhelming, but Tom, driven by primal survival instinct, managed to defend himself with a determination he didn't know he had. During the fight, the man began to shout confused and angry words, claiming that the house was his only dream, his refuge, and that he would kill anyone who dared to desecrate its threshold. In the end, taking advantage of a moment of distraction from his attacker, Tom managed to escape, though wounded and physically and psychologically tried from the encounter. With his last strength, he ran through the cold night, seeking help and safety far from that cursed cabin. Once safe, Tom filed a report with the local police, detailing the incident and providing a description of the man. The officers listened to his testimony with a mix of interest and unsurprise. It was clear they were already familiar with the individual described by Tom. In fact, they confirmed they had been hunting that man for some time due to previous episodes of violence and disturbance. The news that the aggressor was a known problem to local authorities offered Tom bitter comfort. Although he had escaped death, the awareness that that man was still out there, free to strike again, left him with a sense of unease and incompleteness. On a chilly winter evening, Jake and Emily, two inseparable friends since childhood, decided to warm up with a quick meal at the McDonald's in their small town in the heart of Montana. The snow, which had fallen heavily all day, had covered every corner with a muffled silence, except for the constant hum of the fast food's neon light promising warmth and comfort. As they laughed and joked, enjoying their food at one of the few occupied tables, they couldn't help but notice a large red truck parked outside. The vehicle, old and battered, seemed out of place on that quiet country evening. Jake, with a shiver of curiosity mixed with unease, mentioned he had seen it around several times, always in the evening, a detail that had seemed more curious than worrying until that night. Their attention was soon drawn by a young and attractive girl behind the counter, who introduced herself as Lisa, offering them the chance to enter a prize contest organized by McDonald's. All that was needed to sign up was their phone number. Emily, without thinking too much about it, gave hers, attracted by the prospect of winning some unexpected prize. After they finished their meal, as the clock neared closing time and the fast food lights began to dim, the evening took an unexpectedly dark turn. The man from the red truck burst inside with a wild expression and a look that chilled their blood. He had the air of someone not unfamiliar with violence, and his interest seemed eerily focused on them. With reflexes honed by years of sports, Jake and Emily managed to dodge the initial assault and ran out of McDonald's into the biting cold of the night. The man chased them, returning to his truck and starting the engine with a menacing roar. Thus began a heart-pounding chase through the snow-covered streets of the town, with Jake and Emily relying on every ounce of their local knowledge to try to evade their pursuer. After a series of risky turns and split-second decisions, they managed to lose the red truck, finding refuge in an abandoned gas station. With their hearts pounding and breath short, they took shelter inside, trying to process the madness that had just happened. But their ordeal was not yet over. Back at the safety of Emily's home, a disturbing message arrived on her phone. "You will be mine eventually." The message was a clear threat, and the realization that Lisa, the girl from McDonald's, had played a role in their terrible experience was a devastating blow. They understood that she had given Emily's number to the man in the truck, her brother, as part of a dark plan to lure attractive girls into a deadly trap. The two friends, shaken but determined, turned to the local police, sharing every detail of their horrific adventure. The police took their testimony very seriously, immediately launching an investigation into the red truck and its driver. The testimonies of Jake and Emily provided the investigators with crucial details that allowed them to connect the dots in an increasingly clear and alarming picture. They discovered that Lisa, the girl working at McDonald's, was actually the sister of the man in the red truck, an individual with a murky past and a well-documented psychopathic profile. The investigation revealed that Lisa was aware of her brother's dangerousness, and instead of reporting him to the authorities, chose to assist him in his mad hunt. Her position at McDonald's provided the perfect access to potential victims, unsuspecting young girls attracted by the chance to win a contest, who willingly provided their phone numbers, unaware of the terrible fate awaiting them. With the evidence gathered, the police were able to arrest the man in the red truck after a brief but intense manhunt. His arrest brought to light a series of evidence linking him and his sister to various episodes of stalking and attempted kidnappings that had terrorized the community in recent months. Lisa was arrested shortly thereafter. Her complicity with her brother made evident by the surveillance camera recordings from McDonald's, messages on her phone, and the testimonies of Jake and Emily. During the trial, it emerged that her devotion to her brother had driven her to participate in his psychopathic delusions, believing, in a distorted way, that she was helping him find happiness, that she thought society had denied him. Both siblings were found guilty and sentenced to serve long sentences in prison, although in separate facilities to prevent any further collaboration between them. The community could finally breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that two of its most dangerous members were no longer at large. Ava and Sophia, inseparable friends since high school, had always dreamed of embarking on a road trip adventure across the United States. They decided the summer after graduation would be the perfect time to realize their dream. They chose Texas for its wild and unexplored charm, imagining crossing desert landscapes under an endless sky. After days spent driving through vibrant cities and breathtaking landscapes, one evening they found themselves in a remote part of the state, where distances between points of civilization were measured in hours rather than miles. As the sun set and fatigue began to set in, they decided to stop for the night. A rusted sign announced a motel a few kilometers away, the Sunset Motel, a name that promised rest and tranquility. Upon arrival, the motel turned out to be a building from the 60s, with its neon signs partially extinguished, trying in vain to cut through the growing darkness. The owner, a man in his 60s with a piercing gaze and brusque manners, greeted them with a half-smile that looked more like a grimace. After filling out the register with trembling handwriting, he handed them the key to room 9, warning them to not make too much noise. The room was decorated in a retro style, with dark wood furniture and heavy curtains that seemed not to have been washed for years. However, fatigue overcame all other considerations, and soon the two friends fell into a deep sleep. The night passed quietly, until, in the heart of darkness, Sophia woke up hearing footsteps outside the door. She silently got up and, approaching the window, noticed the figure of the owner walking away with a large sack slung over his shoulder. The scene chilled her blood, but she thought it was just a figment of her imagination, clouded by sleep. The following morning, during breakfast at the small diner adjacent to the motel, the two friends noticed a bulletin board full of flyers for missing people. What initially seemed a sad reminder of a reality unfortunately common in a large nation took on a darker meaning when they recognized among the photos that of a girl they had met a few days earlier at a gas station. She had told them she was traveling to New Mexico and would spend the night at a motel along the road. Worried, Ava and Sophia decided to talk to the motel owner, but the man claimed to have never seen the girl. However, his reaction was too quick and nervous to seem sincere. Deciding to investigate, they began to explore the motel and its surroundings, looking for any clues that could explain the mysterious disappearance of the girl and the owner's behavior. In the back of the building, they found a series of old rooms locked. With the help of a lockpick fortuitously found in their car, they managed to open one of the doors, discovering inside a veritable den of personal items that presumably belonged to missing persons. Among these, they recognized a bracelet that the girl from the gas station wore on her wrist. Realizing they were in real and imminent danger, the two friends decided to act. Sophia created a distraction while Ava ran to their car to get the phone and call the police. In the chaos that followed, the motel owner attempted to stop them, but the timely arrival of the authorities put him out of action. Investigators discovered that the Sunset Motel had been the center of a series of unexplained disappearances for years. The owner, exploiting the loneliness of the Texas roads and the anonymity provided by his business, had created an almost perfect system for making travelers disappear without a trace. Ava and Sophia, still in shock but relieved, resumed their journey with the bitter awareness of having brushed against the true face of horror. Their road trip adventure had taken an unexpected turn, transforming into a courageous testimony that put an end to the years of terror established by the owner of the Sunset Motel.